July 5th meeting of the Lake Forest Building Review Board. I am Charlie King. In the absence of Peggy Vignocchi, our normal chairman, I will be the acting chairman of the review board this evening. At this time, I would like to ask the city staff to introduce themselves.
Kathy Cerniak.
Megan O'Neill.
And my fellow board members.
Michael Bleck.
Maddie Dugan, 3rd Ward.
Steuart Tray, 2nd Ward.
Monica Ruggles.
Jon Clair.
Thank you. The board is here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, architects, neighbors, and interested citizens, to continue the long tradition that allows Lake Forest residents and businesses to work together to preserve the qualities and the unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. We recognize the personal importance of each petitioner's request. Our goal is to respect the needs and desires of property owners while balancing the interests of the community as a whole to preserve and enhance its architectural character and landscape streetscapes. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Building Review Board, the types of projects that come before this board are those in which the property owners are requesting a variance to allow a home that is larger than permitted by the code, are seeking a demolition permit and approval of a replacement structure, or otherwise involve issues that could not be fully resolved by city staff. It is important to note that over 95% of building permits are issued by the city without the need of any board review. Thus, the board typically deals with the most challenging and sometimes controversial projects. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and fair meetings. To achieve that goal, the board has adopted meeting procedures, and all parties will be provided an opportunity to speak. These procedures are outlined on the agendas available at the back of the room. This meeting is also broadcast on cable television. Speaking on behalf of the entire board and city staff, our objective is to provide a review process that is thorough, fair, and without unnecessary delay. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the May 2nd meeting. We just received those meetings this evening due to a heavy workload, and we will be reviewing those and approving them at the next board meeting. The next item on the agenda, therefore, is a request for approval of a partial demolition and replacement additions at 10 June Terrace. Owners and occupants are Lou and Lindsay Nero, and they are represented by Troy Mock, architect. Without further ado, Mr. Mock.
Mr. Chairman,
I am Troy Mock, architect.
I'm sorry. I forgot to ask, is there anyone that has a conflict or would like to recuse himself on this matter?
I know the petitioner socially, but I see no need to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Mock.
I am Troy Mock, and I do represent Lou and Lindsay Nero. Lou Nero is here today in the audience. They have purchased 10 June Terrace. It is a small bungalow, I think, lacking any other description of the house. And we're simply trying to increase the size of the house to create a space, a modest space for them and their growing family. The Neros have ties to Lake Forest. They currently live in Chicago, but have family that have lived in Lake Forest for many years. I apologize for the slide here. It obviously shows the existing site plan to be squattier than it typically is, but if you look at this particular site plan, this shows the existing footprint of the house. This shows the existing footprint of the house, and the darker hatch represents the addition that we are proposing here. There is a small covered entry at the front of the porch, at the front of the house. It's represented right here, and we are simply asking to extend that covered porch to change the massing, and you'll see why we're asking to do that in a little bit. I think it's important to note that we are not asking to encroach on the front yard setback of this particular property any more than it currently is, just to elongate the front porch to change the massing of the residence. This is a landscape plan, and I think that we're going to withhold talking about this particular plan. We are asking to remove 5 trees. We have talked to the arborist and have received 35 inches of replanting, and we plan on doing that. I think that to the extent we are willing to do the 35 inches of replanting and to do a landscape that is commensurate to the Lake Forest design codes, that's not an issue. We're just acknowledging that we do have to remove 5 existing trees. In this corner right here, there are 2. or 3 in this corner, and there's 2 in this corner. We plan on redistributing those trees in other corners of the lot. A final landscape plan will obviously be submitted to you prior to the start of construction. This is existing plat of survey. Given the distortion, I'm just going to move right ahead. Hello. Not exactly sure what happened here. If we can have the powers that be might come out from behind and tell me what has happened. The slide I was about to show you is a very simple front elevation. The front entry is slightly, all right, well, that's great. It's showing this screen, and I need to show it this screen. You're right, Lou. 'Cause I'm seeing exactly what I need to see here. It just needs to be showing this screen. When he resolves this, you'll see is an existing front elevation that is, the front entry is slightly off-center. And so when we started trying to design an addition to this and create space on the second floor, which is necessary for the slight increase in square footage for this particular house, we realized that not acknowledging the fact that the entry of this house is not centered is really disservice to it, because there are 3 parts of the front facade that really sort of claim prominence. And we really wanted to do a situation where we could say this particular part is primary, this particular part is secondary, and create a better front entry. And in doing so, we're simply elongating the front entry of the house. And you'll see in a bit that we do have to remove the entire second floor and the roof to change the pitch of the roof. So we can create space above the second floor. And on the second floor, we're going to ask to create a master bedroom and a master bedroom suite, 2 other bedrooms, and a bathroom. So we're changing the roof pitch of the house. I do have a hard copy. If I know that's a pain, but I can bring you a hard copy if this is an issue.
Why don't you go forward with the hard copy for now, and then if we get it back online, we'll switch over to that, just to keep things moving along.
I think we have everything in our packet.
And we do have stuff in our packets, Mr. Mock, that shows most of this.
They have a hard copy? Okay. Thank you. What can I help you with? I'm just going to continue on, if that's okay. So sheet A1 actually shows the front elevation, and I apologize to the spectators who can't see it. It is a very simple front elevation. And what I want to point out is the front entry is not symmetrical about the elevation. And the reason why I think this is important is the initial reaction to this was to change the roof pitch of the house, create space on the second floor as we remove the second floor to create additional space. But the dormers then, although being similar, represented space below that was not similar. And we really needed to define a primary massing of the first floor and a primary and a secondary massing of the first floor. So this is why we decided to do the covered porch and have that metal roof that comes down, is supported by columns. That is very typical of the bungalow style, and create a primary massing and a secondary massing. We changed the roof pitch of the front elevation and the rear elevation to 12-12, simply so we can get enough space to create to create the rooms that we need to create. In this particular case, you see that we're only asking for 2 additional bedrooms and a master suite. So the FAR of the house is still considerably less than what is allowed by the City of Lake Forest. Sheet A2 shows the elevation that we're asking to do. The dormer above the metal roof simply identifies the center of that metal roof. It identifies a particular space. Behind that, it is a bathroom, believe it or not. And the dormer above the secondary massing is a bedroom. And we're simply doing that to centerline the second floor space so we can identify the massings of the house. Oh, okay. Iris, open. Closed. Okay. So this slide shows the existing right elevation. I'm showing this to you only so you can see this particular element here. We have a change in roof pitch and a change in roof direction with no actual vertical change in the exterior wall. This is the only part of the house that we're actually asking to demolish. It is sitting on a thickened slab. We have not done excavation here to find out whether or not it's an appropriate slab, but it is inappropriate to the house in any extent. Here is the elevation that we're proposing that identifies this line as something that needs to have a horizontal relief and change in roof. We are asking for dormers on the back side, so we really want to keep the roof line of this house as low as we possibly can. Insofar as that we wanted the height of the house to reflect the height of the existing houses in the neighborhood. Here we have a 6-foot man shown. This area reflects the only addition of the house. We have taken down this area reflects the addition of the house. We have taken down the existing dining room. Really quickly, I want to identify this roof reveal right here. We're doing this all the way across the side gables because we want to identify that these windows are existing, but yet we are composing a set of windows in the gable with the knee brackets, and I think this particular element here divides the second floor and the first floor, so we can understand that this is a comprised element and this is an existing element. Here we have a covered porch that does not extend any further past the existing covered porch. This is the rear elevation. I show a picture of the rear elevation here. I think you probably see that better on your hard copies, only because this area right here that projects past us is a flat roof. You can actually see that better on the side elevations here, and that's the area that we're demolishing. Here we have that change in roof planes that happen on the side elevation here without any horizontal reveal in exterior walls. Here we're changing that. We're showing the dormers that are appropriate for the bungalow architecture that we're seeking. We have a covered porch, and I think we're talking about the same 12-12 roof pitches that we're asking for the side-to-side gable of the bungalow as we come out of the back of the house, trying to keep the roof line as low as possible, therefore being more appropriate to the context of the existing neighborhood. This is the right elevation. Really, it's the same as the left elevation. We're showing this area here. This line is only a change in material. It does not show a front to back change in relief of the exterior walls, and we're showing that here. We want this to be an actual change in relief, so we have our roof pitches meeting all, and we have our dormer that is similar to the dormer on the right elevation. Again, the front elevation shows a porch that is coming out to the existing context only being elongated so we can change the massing of the house. We have a small panel being designed above this door so we can change the height of the door to match the existing windows. I'm going to go through the demolition very quickly here, only because it's hard for me to look here and look there at the same time. But this represents the entire extent of the demolition. This is built on a slab, and we just don't feel it's appropriate to build upon that slab. So we want to take it down and build an appropriate footing and foundation that we can do a 2-story or 1.5-story structure on. This represents the extent of the addition. You can see that it revolves around the fact that we need to have a reveal here and a reveal here that will allow us to have the roof lines to be appropriate to the back of the house, because currently I think the changes in roof planes that are happening without a change of exterior walls moving in and right, left and right. Again, the first floor, we have minimal demolition here just off the back of the house, and expanding the opening to this room. This room is going to become the dining room. So I move this over. And then, to the extent that I can show here, I'm showing the extension of the family room, the extension of the kitchen, and the breakfast area right here, the family room extension here, a mudroom that is appropriate because the garage is sitting right here. We have no intention of changing the garage except for changing the exterior material to match the house, and then using one of the existing bedrooms on the first floor as a dining room and one of the existing bedrooms on the first floor as a den. The dark line, the dark hatch line, represents the existing footprint of the house. So you understand to the extent that we are encroaching past whatever footprint of the existing house. The second floor, there's really no way to save any portion of it. It is built under the roof pitch. So when we take the roof off and change the roof pitch from a 9/12 to a 12/12, and create the spaces that we've shown on the elevations, this needs to be removed. We're taking this off. We're sistering on new floor joists to be able to support the existing or the new second floor, and so that all comes off. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Staff, would you like to present now?
Thank you, Chairman, Acting Chairman King. Despite the technical difficulties that we had, I think the petitioner did a pretty thorough job of explaining the proposed elevation changes and demolition requested with this project. Essentially, the existing roof is coming off of the existing house, and a new roof form is being added, and a small addition to the rear of the home is also proposed. While the scope of the project is rather large, the remodel that results is still characteristic of the neighborhood. It still has that cottage look to it, 1.5-story massing. We have heard from some of the neighbors in the neighborhood. One letter was submitted to the board earlier today, and that was placed at your seats this evening, with some concerns about drainage and the increase to the footprint and some of the tree loss. I will say that a drainage plan will be reviewed by engineering staff as part of the permit process. With respect to the trees, the petitioner has been in contact with the city arborist, and they've looked at the trees. As a recommended condition of approval, we are suggesting that a final landscape plan be included as part of the permit set for this project to address the inches removed and allow for some replacement on the property. In addition to the Building Review Board's review of this project, the addition of the front porch and slight change in the pitch to the roof requires a front yard setback variance. This home is sited fairly in a consistent manner with other homes on the street. They are pretty much all closer to the street than the required setback. The zoning board consideration of that request will occur later this month. So with that, there are some conditions of approval with respect to landscaping, a staging plan. As you guys know, we've seen many petitions in this neighborhood, and I think tracking the construction traffic and making sure that vehicle access and the roads are clear for the neighborhood is important, and there are some conditions that speak to staging plans for parking and construction materials. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Staff is recommending approval this evening.
Thank you. Now's the time for any questions or clarifications from the board to the petitioner or staff.
Do you have any plans can you give us any hint as to what you're going to do about the drainage issues that the neighbor has brought up?
We plan, as always, to make sure that we're going to submit a civil engineering plan to make sure that no water runoff on this particular property is increased or the load is increased towards any other property. The footprint of the property is only being increased by 330 square feet. When you stand in that area is fairly flat. In fact, most of that area is comprised of a brick paver patio. So I have personally no concerns that we'll be able to manage the water runoff of that area. Even if we have to put a well in and redirect it at the front, and that's something we'll certainly consider doing if it's required to make sure that we do not exacerbate any other water runoff to the neighbors.
Okay. And do you have any samples of your finishes, colors, bricks,
I do.
roofing material?
The material is going to be a stucco, and the stucco is going to be a natural stucco, which is actually very difficult to find a sample of.
Right.
So the windows are going to be black, and the gutters are going to then be a darker gray. Of course. I'm sorry?
Troy, you're
This
gonna
one
grab
right
that
here.
one.
Troy,
Oh.
right there.
I've been here before. So we plan on doing a natural gray stucco, which is, think of wet concrete. It's a very gray. The trim color is going to be a blue gray. Not quite as blue as a French blue, but a blue gray. We plan on doing black windows, a black roof. It's going to be an asphalt roof. There are a couple of roofs we're looking at. We're looking at a Grand Manor or a Capstone, which are the tri-level asphalt roofs that provide that artificial shadow line. Only insofar as that the cedar roofs don't seem to be lasting as long. And from a maintenance standpoint, we'd like to create a house that is maintenance-free as much as we possibly can. So I was brought insofar as samples for the, now I'm all flustered and I can't find anything. But I was going to show you a sample color of the gray, and as soon as I'm able to find it, I'll present it to you. But the gutter color and the fascia color is going to be a darker gray. The stucco color is going to be a natural gray. And if you've ever seen a natural stucco finish, it's actually without pigment. So it looks like a wet concrete. The roof is going to be a black. It's going to be a high-end asphalt roof, Capstone or, as I said, Grand Manor. And the trim is going to be a blue-gray.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The back area that I think has been cleared, what was that prior? Was this wild growth to
It was
block the?
absolutely wild growth. There was a fence that separated that line that I showed on the platter survey, and was just growth. There was nothing back there. The existing
And that
trees
backs
are-
up to the bike path?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And
that
then
was cleared.
there's no plan to replace the existing one-car garage? They're not planning on a larger
They're
garage?
not planning on replacing the one-car garage, no.
Okay. All right, and then one question I have on, would be drawing A4, the right elevation. You have the, as you go towards the rear, you've got the two blank walls. One of them, the first one, there, I think there's a door there now and maybe a window. That, looking at your interior plans, that's a closet.
That is correct.
Yeah, and then the second one, the new addition, that's a family room. And I guess, did you consider any kind of a window in, I mean, you've got these two blank walls that look a little boring. And probably, I know, looking at the plan, it looks like you've got a huge television set in the family room on that wall, and they probably wanted a blank wall from the interior, but I thought maybe some sort of a window to break it up a little bit, if you thought about it. The two blank walls looked a little strange to me.
And I can appreciate that comment. Obviously, the first blank wall is because of the closet, and that addition is specifically for a mudroom coming off the one-car garage, where they can take off the shoes, and there's 4 lockers and linear coats. I think that adding a window to the other wall of the family room is something we would absolutely be willing to consider if it becomes part of the...
I just bring it up. It looked very boring with these 2 stucco walls there without something to break it up.
I think in 3 dimensions when it gets built and we have that, the overhang, which is larger there, being supported by brackets and then
Yeah, and
coming
you're
back
stepped
and
back, I
overhang,
realize that too.
it becomes, I think, less boring in those
Perhaps,
3 dimensions.
yeah.
That's just my original thought.
That's a good point. Okay, those are my comments, thank you.
I have a couple questions on the, all the aluminum siding comes off and it all becomes a stucco on the exterior. So the only thing you have left is a little bit of brick by the front door. Is that right?
That is correct.
Did you consider making that stucco as well, or is that doesn't fit the scheme?
We have not considered making that stucco at this point.
What color is that?
We considered making, or staining that brick to be commensurate to the color of the stucco.
Okay.
The brick, I think, right now is a whitish, greenish, maybe. I have to think about it, but the brick was, we were thinking was going to be more of a trim color, and we were going to stain that brick.
Okay. And then the covered porch at the entrance covers about 75 or 80% of the front facade. Did you look at taking it across the whole facade, and does that not work?
We did actually look at taking across the whole facade. The reason why I wanted to do the front porch was because the original thought about this design was to change the roof pitch and then provide large dormers centered on the existing windows on the first floor. When we did that, it exacerbated the fact that that front door isn't centered. And even though when we look at it, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when we try to do a Cape Cod element or something like that, it doesn't work. So we actually used the front porch and brought that out to the extent of the existing front porch so we could change the massing of the front elevation. And in doing so, and we'll talk about this later at the ZBA, we are building into a non-conforming setback. So I wanted to keep that as low as possible. So as opposed to doing a side gable to side gable bungalow, I wanted to do a shed dormer to side gable bungalow to keep the infraction of building into that setback low. So that's why I did the front porch as a shed dormer and only to one side. So I could keep the infraction to a limited amount and change the massing of the front elevation.
Okay. And then that the pack-clad pan dormer, what is that color?
It's going to be a
metal.
dark bronze. So it's, if it was going to go up as copper, in 3 months it'd be dark bronze, dark brown. And of course, in our environment today, it doesn't turn green for many, many years.
And so you'd rather have that as a standing seam rather than going with the shingle?
Yes.
Okay. And then, now, do you mention about the garage, that's going to be a stucco garage as well?
Yes. It's
Okay.
not shown anywhere, but the garage is a single-car garage. It sits there. We don't want to do anything to it. We just want to take the materials off and make it a stucco garage.
Okay. And then could you explain a little bit about that center column, the scale of that one versus compared to the other two?
It's all about making things centered. The centered column allows me to expand the middle column so I can get the window on the left to be centered between the 2 columns and the door to the right to be centered on the 2 columns. It's not an uncommon thing that we do to have a pedestal that might expand and contract with 2 columns on top of it to allow us to have those elements be centered within that A-B rhythm, if you will.
Okay. And then the shutters, they say that they're to match existing, they're not the same proportion, but they're the same
The
style.
existing shutters on the right window are not appropriate for the window. So we're gonna simply change them to make sure that if they were to close, they would close half the window. Right now, they're too large or too small. One of the two, but we're simply gonna change them so they're appropriate to the size of the window and leave the other ones as they are because they are appropriate.
That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. You mentioned that the new windows are going to be black.
Yes,
So with the existing windows, what are your plans for those?
it's a very good question. We intend on making all the windows black.
So are you going to replace the
Yes,
existing
we're
windows?
gonna replace all the windows so they are black. It has been going back and forth, to the extent that most of the windows are going to be replaced anyways. We've decided to go ahead and just change all the windows to an aluminum clad black, even though they're not represented that way on the plan.
Okay, what's the column color?
The column color is gonna be the trim color, so it's gonna be a slightly darker gray than the stucco.
The blue-gray color?
Yes.
Looking at the columns and the plinth, you have that as stucco right now. Did you investigate precedent for that? I mean, that's something that I haven't commonly seen in a carpenter-built column, that the base would be stucco.
To be honest, no. I decided on stucco because the house is a modest house, and I didn't want to incorporate another material. The brick is there. It is going to be stained to match the trim. We didn't want to incorporate more brick into that, especially with it's a very rigid brick. It's not a tumbled brick. And so in lieu of adding another material to it, we just decided to pick another material that is already on the house, so we went with stucco.
And the question about the rhythm of the columns in front, did you investigate actually going with like spacing four columns across equally, as opposed to the two center double columns?
I would have to go back and look at my sketches. The reason why the columns are the way they are, I think I mentioned previously, and of course there's always another way to do it, was I was simply trying to find a way to make sure that the window in the existing living room is centered in those columns, and the front door is centered in those columns, so creating a rhythm, which is why we have the double column in the center.
So you did say the shed roof is a bronze color, so that's introducing yet another color. You've got the black, you've got the cement, you've got blue-gray, and then bronze.
That is correct. Personally, I think bronze is something that we see all the time. It is nondescript. When we drive by it, it's something that our eye perceives as something appropriate to almost anything, and as opposed to trying to do some other color in a standing metal seam. Certainly we could do gray, but I thought that the bronze would be more appropriate to the neighborhood, just in terms of we have a lot of obviously historic buildings, and having that color represented in the house I think is appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Troy, I've got a bunch of questions, so I think maybe we can look at this as speed dating, and if you can give me quicker answers and
Okay.
that just sort of, answer the question without too much salesmanship behind it, please.
Sure.
Grading, existing grading goes in what direction? Toward the street or toward the rear or toward the side?
For the most part, it goes towards the street.
For the most part, but does that include the entire backyard also goes toward the street, or is this just?
The backyard is more flat than the elevation shown in the plans.
Okay, so there's no engineering that really describes it, it's
At this point, no.
observations? Okay. So you're going to zoning board because the existing house is non-conforming?
For the front yard setback, that's
Do you
correct.
know, and I'm looking, I guess, at a dimension of about 15 feet 7 inches from where the addition and the new house are beyond that front yard setback?
If you look at the left or right elevation, if you draw a line down the middle of the chimney shown, that's about where the new front yard setback is. So everything in front of that,
and-
towards the street, is
And then the chimney also, it looks like we've got a 6-foot side yard setback with a 5-foot chimney.
The chimney needs a variance in so far that we
Okay.
have to raise it because of the roof.
And the eave overhang on that side elevation projects how far from the current wall face?
The gable to the side elevation projects 18 inches.
So that's also going to need a variance?
I think we're 6 inches behind it, so the 18 inches works.
No, you're 7.5 inches. You're 6 foot 7.5 inches from the existing building to the side yard setback. And eave overhangs also have to be in the setback.
Within 12 inches? Or within the entire,
Within the entire setback.
okay. Well, that's something we can certainly modify on that side of it.
So you're going to suggest that that rake overhang on that side with the brackets and that skirted roof section are all going to happen in 7.5 inches? Or will
I
that
think I need
change
to
the-
talk to
that may
staff
change?
and the ZBA about that.
Okay. The garage is non-conforming
The ex-
along that
yes.
side yard setback?
Yes, it is.
Are you going to put new shingles on that garage?
We're going to stucco it.
But on the roof?
Yes.
New overhead door?
There's already a new one, but sure.
I mean, are you? Is that the
No, we
intention?
have no,
There's a modern door on there that's only a couple years old. It needs to be replaced full cabin.
Well, I'm wondering, was the intention to replace that door or keep it?
Sure, well, we were gonna keep it, but it needs
the intention is to keep it.
To keep it. And then, I'm not sure I have elevations of their garage, but are there windows and man doors that are also going to remain?
There are a set of French doors that open in the center of the garage out to the yard.
And those will remain?
Yes,
And then the patio off the back because of the addition is all going to be rebuilt?
that's correct.
And the driveway?
To the extent that we can keep it during construction, that's what we're going to do.
And the front walk?
Again, we have no intention of changing the front walk. only
But all
to
this
repair it.
construction that's involving foundation work is near enough that it would have to be handled at some point?
Not in the front, I think at the back, definitely.
Well,
But in
you're
the
putting
front, I
a
think
pool-
we're okay.
Okay. The type of trees, there's 5 trees being removed, anywhere from 8 inches to 7 to 15 inches, 17 inches. Are those, what type of trees are those?
I've been in contact with the arborist. The 17-inch tree is a spruce. The other ones I am unsure of. The arborist is, the 17 inch is the only one that he's concerned of, and he is requiring us to do a 35-inch replacement, which we're showing. We are going to submit a landscape plan by a landscape architect or other certified body to make sure that that all is in keeping. But what we're going to do in that drawing is show you that we do intend on replanting what is necessary per the village code.
So the windows are being replaced, the front door is going to be refinished, I saw that note, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you describe or clarify that change in material plane that you're showing on the left elevation? You said it's in the same plane, but there's a heavy line there that usually indicates a change in plane, but I'm not sure how you're making a material change when both are stucco.
Well, the existing elevation, the addition off the back of the house is in line with the exterior wall. And what we're doing is we're simply moving that new exterior wall, since we're removing the addition, in 6 inches so we can
Oh, I see that now. I'm sorry.
provide,
Okay, so there's a change a slight change in plane, not a
Yes.
change in material. The existing basement, how deep is the existing basement?
it's a 7-foot-10 pour.
The floor framing that's there existing is what?
2 by 8s.
They're 2x8s?
That's correct.
So what I'm looking at here on your drawing where it says metal C-channels at 36 on center with 2x12s running perpendicular, are those being, are those
We're-
2x12s being sistered onto the 2x8s?
We're providing a beam, so we can frame into that beam, and then the rest of we'll provide a pocket in the floor joint, in the foundation, so we can put 11 by 7/8 TGIs, which is what we want to build with today. And so we're providing that column just so we can frame into it if necessary.
So the top of the 2x8s, that floor plane it will
Exists.
stay existing, and the 2x12s that you're framing underneath there will be, your
Well, we're doing
framed
crawl
in-
space, so we're just gonna,
well, I'm talking about the existing part. You're gonna be framing on, a structural basement wall, or are you,
pardon, I'm gonna go look at that. Are you on the foundation plan?
well, yeah, and there's an existing steel beam that I'm assuming the 2x8s are on, and I'm just kind of curious as to how you're framing below. If you're maintaining the top plane of the 2x8s, everything that you're framing next to that is coming below.
That's correct.
And you're achieving that by putting in 2x4 walls to the outside perimeter and birds mouthing into your steel beam in some fashion, or?
And where are you?
I'm looking at your basement plan, A10.
A10. And I'm looking at A10, it's up on the drawing, and I have on your plan, C channels listed somewhere?
Yeah.
I think that's been reconsidered, and we're simply going to do a beam, because we are on top of that foundation. What we need to do is cantilever past, the existing foundation, about 1.5 feet in one direction and 2 feet in another direction, pick up a column that's coming from above. And the only reason why those beams are there at all is to pick up that cantilever. Everything else is going to be simply framed, and we're going to do a pocket on the new foundation walls to allow those.
Okay, my question is nothing to do with the new foundation.
Okay.
I'm focusing on the existing and how you're modifying this framing. And it appears that you're going to be taking at least 4 inches out of the ceiling height in that existing basement? If you're
Only-
going from 2x8s to 2x12s?
But only in the crawl space area.
That's not what your sheet shows. I'm on sheet A10.
Okay.
I'm looking at those notes that run side to side up toward the top of your, nope, that's the.
Oh, these right
Those
here.
notes right there. tell
Those
me
are
that-
existing.
So there's 2x12 floor framing that's existing. Or are you sistering on to the existing floor? Because that's, I mean, for 2x8s, I don't know what that span is, but it looks like
That's
it's
existing
a-
framing, and forgive me, I did not look at that before I came here, but it is at a very odd framing. They are steel C-channels that are bolted to wood framing that run and support the floor joists above. It is not a conventional framing.
So
We have no
that's not a
intention of-
new condition, that's your existing condition.
That's exactly correct.
Is the basement finished?
Parts of it are finished. To the right, if I'm looking at this proposed foundation plan, to the front of the stairs is finished. It's drywall and carpet.
Does that bathroom exist?
Yes.
And in your addition, would you, well, I'm assuming there's a sewage ejector or you're at some point drained to street level. Is there a sump pump down in this basement?
Yes. We
And
intend on
the
not changing
existing-
any
You're going to keep
plumbing.
the existing hot water heater and the existing furnace?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Hear that?
You're going to keep the existing mechanicals?
We're going to add to what's there, but yes, everything that's there we're keeping, except for
How are you-
the electrical service needs to be upgraded.
And you're going to be running off of that same furnace to do all your addition?
Well, we're going to add to it.
Add to it, meaning you're going to put another furnace down there?
That's correct.
So you're going to provide all new ductwork to that, and is that zoned for the second floor then, or something?
That's correct.
And you're going to be upgrading the service, water service to 1.5 inches, because that's going to be, it's the code now?
Absolutely.
Now, the existing house, I'm assuming was built in the 50s. I saw some note that suggested it was probably beyond 50 years old or so.
We haven't found documentation, but somewhere between the 30s and 50s.
So
The
it
only
is-
thing that makes me pause about the 50s was the existing structural condition that you just talked about, that skipped my mind, but it's an odd situation.
And the foundation is concrete.
Absolutely.
You're remodeling the existing first floor. I'm assuming, you're doing a new kitchen, so I'm assuming these are all new cabinets and appliances and
Yes.
tops and new flooring.
Yes.
Is there new flooring throughout the entire first floor?
The existing first floor is hardwood, so we plan on keeping and refinishing as much as we can and providing new to match existing in new areas.
Would you be remodeling that bathroom?
Currently, no.
Is there insulation in the first floor walls? If it was built in the 50s, you might probably get something in there, but is that something you intend to upgrade? Along with any kind of
Being a
electrical
design-build
outlets?
process, we certainly will, if there's an opportunity to provide any blow-in insulation in those areas, we will. We plan on spray foaming insulation, everything else, everything that's brand new.
Okay.
To the best of our ability, we're going to make the building efficient.
So in remodeling this area, are you considering electrical outlets, and would you be taking a substantial portion of drywall down in order to achieve
Not in
solid
the-
conduit piping to the outlets and
Not in the existing living room, the existing bedrooms. There are code compliant outlets there, so we'll simply upgrade them to be, in terms of wiring, but wherever we can blow insulation, we will. Everything else is going to be brand new.
okay, but you are taking off the second floor.
We are.
You're taking off the roof and the ceiling.
We're taking off the roof. The existing floor joists are going to remain. We're going to sister next to them
Okay.
in attempts to save any drywall ceiling that we can.
The stairs, the existing stairs, you're keeping those.
Yes.
Do you know the treads and rise and widths of those stairs?
The treads are 7.5, and the rise is 7 3/4, and the treads are 10.5.
And the stair is 3 feet wide?
Yes.
Okay. No other questions?
Thanks. Anybody else have any further questions, clarifications? Okay, well, at this point, if there's anyone from the public that would like to come forward to testify. Okay. Seeing none, any final questions from the board to the petitioners or to the staff? Go ahead.
I'm a little concerned about some of the exterior finishes. There just seems to be an awful lot of different colors going on and a lot of different textures with keeping the brick and adding stucco and shingle roof and copper roof and the shutters, to me, to my eye, don't work all that well. I was wondering if you would consider changing the shutters to have the recessed panels like the columns do.
I think changing the shutters to the recessed column is something that we can do. We want to keep the shutters. We want to keep an aspect of the house. To the extent that we're changing it, we do feel that we're trying to give the house what it lacked to begin with, as opposed to making it something different. And to the extent that the shutters isn't something that you would typically find in a house like this, to us, it sort of gave us premise to say, well, let's try to keep those just to, as a nod towards what it was. But I think doing panel shutters is something we'd absolutely consider doing. To your worry about the number of materials, I get that. But it's stucco, it's 2 roofing materials, it's 2 exterior materials, and 2 different trim colors. So I think even though we say it out loud, it's really not terribly complex in terms of the kinds of colors and materials that we're using.
Okay.
I did have a couple questions, actually, after Matty Rosat. The one aspect I was a little curious on, I can see all the colors. It's the blue-gray trim that you're saying. I don't know, did you show a sample of that, or could you show it again?
We haven't.
or-
We'll be absolutely happy to show that as a condition of whatever condition you decide. It is something that we're going back and forth on in terms of the color of the stucco. It is, the blue-gray is, it originally started as the French blue-gray. I think that's too blue. And so we're moving through sort of a discussion about what that's going to be.
And then the brackets, I think they're on 3 faces of the house. That's, I think it's called a custom cedar bracket. Is that going to be the same trim, or could you give us a
It's
little more
the
detail?
same trim color. It is not, it is a very stereotypical, I hate that word, but very typical triangular bracket that you would find in a craftsman house or bungalow like this.
And they're going to be the same bracket on all sides, or no?
Yes, they'll be
All
the same. And to the extent that they're a little bit larger at the back entry, but that's supporting that covered entry, because we didn't want to really do a covered entry, so we just elongated that overhang to provide a 3-foot covering, and so when someone's coming off the back of the house, there's a little bit of an overhang to protect them as they walk in. But other than those 2, all the other brackets are exactly the same size.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Is this for discussion time, or, because I was going to interject before we switched from comments from the audience. And we did get in our packet a letter from the neighbor at 2 North June Terrace.
Thank you.
Very concerned about the drainage issues.
Correct.
I
And
just wanted to point that out.
we're at the place right now, any questions, and after our questions to the staff or to the petitioner, then we discuss. And seeing none, we can go right into the discussion aspect of it. With that,
Well, I think it's a fine petition as far as space is concerned, and I think the petitioners will be careful about the drainage, and all that will come with the final engineering plan, which I know the city has to ultimately approve. I go back to, and it's strictly personal, but I go back to the number of colors and finishes, and I wish there were samples to see. I guess that's my final comment.
I feel that I admire the petitioner and the architect for using the existing structure the best you can. I'm surprised that they're not putting a larger garage up, but there's all kinds of reasons for not doing that, and I'll accept that. In regard to the neighbor's letter, I don't see a great deal of change in the footprint of the house. So as far as impervious surface, yes, it's going up, but I think you mentioned the number 30 square feet or something like that. It's relatively small.
330.
Or 330, okay. Relatively small. Clearing of the back, that wild, they're replacing the trees. It's still dirt, it's going to suck up water. I don't see a great deal of change in any grade or anything like that. So and then along with the city and the engineering on the drainage, and the petitioner has stated he's willing, if it comes up through the engineering study of it, that he's got to put in some sort of a well to collect water and put it to the front or someplace else if that's necessary. I don't see a great deal more you could do. I'm in favor of the project as it's shown.
Well, I think the cottage style is appropriate style for the street. I think it'll fit in nicely. I applaud that you're going for the 1.5-story look. I think it's a fairly balanced front elevation, with the exception of the column spacing. I think I would prefer to see the 4 columns spread apart evenly, because that would give you the appearance of it's a symmetrical porch and it reads entry. And the other comment I have about the columns, and it kind of ties back to what Maddie said about if you change the shutters to a paneled shutter, you could make that plinth a wooden paneled plinth, which I think would simplify the facade. You still have all the wood, and I think that could be a nice improvement to it. I just haven't really seen stucco column plinths very often, so other than that, most of the other elevations I really think read pretty well. I am pleased that you're replacing the other existing windows to match the black, otherwise I think that could be problematic. And I think staff or the city will handle the drainage issues, so.
Thank you. John, you have any thoughts?
Well, I'd like to just say I am not as enamored as my fellow board members with this petition. I just find it, I find some of the elements on the elevations more so having to do with the existing. For instance, I look at the right elevation and, you put a new second floor gable on it and everything's symmetrical there, but then when you get down to the existing windows that, by the way, are being replaced, they just fall short of being in the right spot. On that same elevation, I agree with other comments about windows being placed on these empty walls. And I guess I'm just curious, what are we enamored with that we're saying we appreciate you keeping the existing house? The basement, by the time you're done with it, is going to barely have a 7-foot height. You're going through all the same gyrations of adding foundation, and you're doing it with a crawl space. You're replacing all the windows. You're replacing all the cabinets. You're putting new openings in walls that don't have them. You're taking out entire rear elevation sections in order to have an opening to the new addition. I just question the logic behind not just taking this house, making it into its conforming setback, and designing something that isn't so costly to stick elements to. And by that I'm referring to all these dormers that are coming off the house. I don't think they add elegance. I think they complicate, and I think the cost of construction on those far exceeds the cost of taking out the existing 2x4 walls and building them properly, and making sure they're insulated properly, and making sure that the mechanical systems aren't something that you're just scabbing into, that you're actually designing a house that doesn't make excuses for why there's a double column at the front doors because it's trying to line up with a window that's in the wrong place.
We have actually.
I just, let me finish.
Sorry.
This is for the board discussion only for now. Thank you, though.
There's a a bathroom, which seems to be the highlight of the front elevation, that the entire 12-foot length of wall is windows. There's no privacy, and it's all presented to the street. And that's a hall bath. That's not a master bath. That's a kid's bath. I just think we're looking at something that is overly complicated for a small lot that should be a very simple and cost-effective house to build. Taking off all the siding, preparing it to receive stucco, staining the existing brick, changing all the windows, interior and exterior trim around them. To me, it defies logic, and I'm just not enamored with the result of this petition.
Okay. Michael, any thoughts?
I think that there's some elements of the front facade that I think could use a little bit further refinement, as Monica alluded to with the columns, and I'm not so sure that I think that the shutters work for the craftsman-style home the bungalow that you're trying to present. The other elevations I think I'm okay with. It's just that I think that the front facade is what kind of that I kind of have a little bit of an issue with, and the number of materials that are going on at that facade.
I concur. I would like to see the 4 columns. I just don't know that existing window and door, if those are going to be balanced or not, but I'd like to see a schematic of that perhaps, and I do agree on the shutters. I just don't. As configured right now, I don't think they match that style per se. Overall, I will say that I think it's appropriate for the neighborhood, and I do appreciate the fact that you're keeping the floor, and you know, be it cost or for the environment, I appreciate the fact that you're not just leveling this place and building from scratch if possible. So I think the rest of the elevations look good. I'm not worried about the drainage. We've got other people on the city that can handle that issue, and only adding 330 square feet footprint, it just doesn't strike me as too troublesome to get over that hurdle. So with that being said, trying to get a consensus here, if we were to approve this subject to minor modifications, I don't know if we want to go to a subcommittee to do that, or go to a...
Well, Charlie, I'd like to see it again. I think there's issues that the petitioner doesn't understand about the setback and the design of an elevation that shows brackets and a projected eave overhang with a skirt that you're just not going to get in 7.5 inches the way the elevation shows. I think there's ways of putting windows into those side elevations where there are none. I mean, yeah, we've got a mudroom, we've got a closet, I understand that, but on the other side, we've got lockers. Well, if you flip the closet to the interior wall and provided a locker situation on that exterior wall, there's a great opportunity to put a window seat and have a window on that elevation. I really think this should come again so that we do really understand what we're voting on with staining brick and you know, putting a new chimney onto the existing to raise it up.
I think you're right, John, and I think some of the other concerns we had with some of the schematics and the color, I think that would, I know, Maddie, you mentioned that you'd like to see that as well. So perhaps a subcommittee to work on some of the refinements and then come back to the board with it after those refinements are completed might be a good solution to this.
Sure.
Yeah, I hate to hold the petitioner up, but I think it's important that we see it again,
Okay.
and maybe a subcommittee would help.
Okay.
Would that impact them going in front of ZBA?
Oh, yeah.
The zoning board meeting is scheduled for the end of the month, so there certainly is time for the petitioner to make some adjustments, and I think it'll depend on the petitioner and how quickly, if the board decides to go with the subcommittee, that process can happen.
Sounds like some of the board members would like to see this back to the full committee. And after hearing this reason, I think that's probably what needs to happen.
We can also look at which aspects of the suggested modifications impact the zoning board's review, because some of the items that have been discussed this evening will not impact the zoning board's discussion. It's more of a aesthetic review that's under the building review board's purview. So I think we can work with them to keep them moving forward.
And there's some colors, some material samples that I'd like to take a look at too. I mean, to suggest that the stucco resembles concrete, well, concrete is not the most aesthetic material. I'd like to see if it, if it looks like concrete or if it looks like gray stucco. And then the brown metal seam roof, be nice to see a sample of that. And the blue color, I mean, blue could be a pretty wide spectrum of colors, and I'm just not sure. I personally, I don't have enough here to vote affirmative to this. So if the other board, if you'd like to take it to a vote, and you all do, that my vote's just one vote, but I'd like to see it again, in my opinion.
Any other thoughts, or,
I think I'd go to a subcommittee and have it come back to the board for consideration.
sounds good? Can we get a motion for that, please?
I make a motion that we send this to a subcommittee for further work and bring it back to the board for full consideration.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. The next item on the agenda is a request for approval of the demolition of the existing single-family residence and a replacement residence and the associated landscape plan at 1359 Edgewood Road. The owner and developer are Peter Childs, and Jeff Letzer is your project manager. Before we begin, I'd like to ask anyone if there's any conflicts or anybody needs to recuse himself on this petition.
I had a neighbor contact me about the petition, but it was a very brief discussion, and I don't think it'll have any bearing on my judgment on this matter.
Okay, anyone else? Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Letster. I'm the project manager on this project. I'm with Aspect Design Architects. With me tonight is Charles Amoro, who is my head architect working on the project. Also with me is Peter Childs, the owner of the property. Tonight we're talking about a request for demolition of an existing residence at 1359 Edgewood Road. We're proposing to demolish the existing residence and its existing detached two-car garage. In your packets, you have criteria that we put together, a statement of intent, the demolition request. We have landscape plans, we have engineering plans, we have proposed home plans over overlays of the existing residence, so you get a good feel for everything there. But I'd like to start just with a little quick history of the project itself. The home itself was built we believe in around 1927, as an existing one-story, kind of a bungalow fashion home with an open porch front. Through the time, I believe somewhere in the 60s, I'm not quite sure when the front porch itself was converted into a living space area, but in the 60s, a second floor was added to this home. And the existing second floor was just literally laid on top of the existing ceiling joist without too much concern of structure or aesthetics. The current home also sits in a non-conforming fashion with current zoning. The north property line basically sits on the house. The house is about 0.3 and 0.1 feet away from the north property line. The front yard setback also is non-conforming currently. In the packet, there are some photos of the existing front where you can visually quickly see the existing residence and then how the second floor was added to the top. Structurally, when we first looked at the house, our intent was to do an addition remodel on this project. So we had worked through some alternative designs coming up with a floor plan. In working with staff, we sat down and went through the project with them, and after reviewing it, many somewhat negatives developed. Firstly, just the zoning issues. We had front yard and side yard setback issues. The current foundation itself looks to appear to be in a shape where we could add a second-story addition, but the floor joist, beams, and the columns would need to be replaced. The height of the basement, though, was always an issue. It's only about 6 foot 4 inches currently. So that was always kind of also a problem if we were to move on with an addition remodel to the project. So we did look at trying to do an addition remodel, conforming then to new zoning setbacks, which would push the house on its north boundary over a good 6 or 7 feet. And in developing that, the elevations became very awkward. The layout of the house became somewhat difficult to manage. We did come up with a plan that we thought could kind of work, but really reviewing it, all of the room sizes themselves were very tiny and not to where we wanted to be in a current home market. So again, after staff review, we sat back and decided then to move forward with the demolition request and then to design a new home which would require no zoning variances, meets all the bulk requirements, and actually is below the bulk requirements by 222 feet, is below the height requirement by almost 3 foot 9 inches, and to develop a new plan and also to build a detached garage to the rear. On the board right now is a proposed site plan showing our new structure and new detached garage. The detached garage is towards the rear of the property, which matches similar homes that were built 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago now, to the south, where there's a new home front, detached garages in the back. The topography of the site itself flows from front to back. There's roughly about 2.5 feet grade, a difference in almost 300 feet running from the front to the back. We would be putting in a new driveway along the south border connecting to the rear garage. In doing so, we are proposing to take down 2 current trees that would be in the driveway of what we're proposing. We're leaving all the other major trees and would protect those through construction. We are aligning our driveway entry as it comes into the property with the current street cutout, because there is an existing tree right kind of in the, somewhat of the middle of the property in the parkway. So that's why there's a slight kind of a jog in the driveway, and we're also trying to pull the drive as far away from the south border as it comes in. The house itself, Charles, if you could go to AR2, please. This is the proposed front elevation. Our overall height of our proposed construction is 26 foot, 3.5 inches, which is below the 30-foot max that would be allowed in the zoning district. We have, and again, this lot is a little unusual because it's only 38 feet wide. So we have a house, the overall house width at its base is 19 foot 8 inches wide. And that obviously accommodates the current zoning and room for a driveway to get past it. Because of the narrow feel of this lot, there's definitely length to our house. Staff comments to you have brought up some of these ideas and their criteria, which we have met all the criteria based on staff comments, but I'd like to kind of jump to those of staff criteria comments. Where in criteria 4, they feel that some of this has not been met. And I think it comes to, Charles, if you could go to AR4, please. This is the right elevation of the home, or the south elevation. A couple things that I wanted to point out. There was, I believe, a letter from a neighbor that was introduced to you, and I just want to make some numbers clear up front. The proposed total impervious coverage of our new home garage and driveway is 48% of the site. The current home and its driveway and its patio and its garage is 36%. So we're roughly adding a little over 12% of total impervious. We're well below the city code of the 30% based on the house and the garage numbers. Because our footprint of house, we're adding 499 square feet from what the current is on the first floor. In the attempt to break up the mass and scale of the side elevations is obviously the biggest challenge when we're trying to have a home that's not even maxed out in bulk. Again, we could have over 2,900 square feet. We're below that. To break up the roof lines with projected bays and roofs, similar to actually a house right across the street that is a similar type of lot, narrow lot with similar width constraints. The house itself is all horizontal cedar clapboard siding. The roofing would be a 40-year architectural grade asphalt shingle. We have masonry brick chimney, fireplace in the rear. Open front porch in the front. Kind of playing with the dimensions of that. I don't like to go too tight of a porch, but I know we're dealing with a length issue on this house, on the house. So we have like a roughly about a 6-foot porch in the front, which still gives it a usability. And in the back of the home, Charles, if you could go back to AR3, please. The back is stepped, so it's not one plane. And Charles, if you, again, go back to AR4. Where the chimney's at the back of the house, that is the end of the mass of the home. We are going back about 29 feet farther with that main mass of the house than the current home. I just wanted to point out, Charles. Charles, if you could go to AR17. Thank you. What I'm showing here on sheet AR17 is the existing streetscape. Because the streetscape itself is somewhat unusual, because the home to the north is set back considerably, because it's a flag lot, to our proposed home. And the home to the south, which is newer construction, is typically at the current front yard setback. As you can see on this, the existing home is about in the same position as the home to the south, and its detached garage, though, is directly across from the house to the north. Charles, if you go to AR 16, please. In our proposed plan, you can see our home does stretch back farther than the home on the south, but we did want to, again, push the garage all the way back to create a larger yard space, which is in kind of keeping with the other homes to the south, and also gives the availability to now the home in the north actually have some green space instead of looking at a detached garage structure. And also on this drawing, you can see the proposed streetscape. Again, the home to the south, we are probably about a foot or two below that overall height. And the home to the north is somewhat unusual, where it's a really low-pitched brick ranch, again, though stepped back very far. And again, we are proposing a brand-new garage, which is also in your packets on sheet AR 18. Again, it would be in keeping with the new design of the house and same materials. So with that, I would open it up back to you folks.
Okay, thank you very much. Staff?
Thank you, Acting Chairman King. As was noted by the petitioner, this is a request for complete demolition of the existing house and a replacement structure. The board has a set of criteria to look at for demolition, and as part of that criteria is looking at the replacement structure and the compatibility of the replacement structure as it relates to the siding of the home, the architectural detailing of the home, the materials, the massing, the level of simplicity or ornateness of a home. With this request, given the information provided by the petitioner, staff does generally support the demolition aspect of this request. The fact that building onto this home will ultimately result in demolition, that there are some structural deficiencies that prohibit or make it very challenging to remodel the existing structure. With respect to the replacement structure, at this point we are looking for input from the board on the siding, the massing, the way the home extends on the lot beyond the existing homes, to really make sure that it meets all of the codes and guidelines that the board is to look at when evaluating these requests. While this project might meet the technical aspects of the code, it's under bulk, meets the height requirements, it meets the setback requirements. The board also has residential design guidelines. The board has standards in the ordinance that really help guide infill development to be compatible with the street, to look at where homes are sited, the level of detailing, some of the other items that I mentioned earlier. So I would encourage you to really look at your standards and look at this as a comprehensive project and provide input to the petitioner at this time to come back to the board at a later date. We are recommending it be continued this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Time for questions from the board, to either the staff or the petitioner.
Guess I could start with some questions. On one of the diagrams, it showed 43-foot front setback. Is that the minimum setback, or how'd you arrive at 43 feet?
The minimum is 40, actually.
Okay. And then in our packet, we had gotten a letter from a neighbor concerned about drainage. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, of course. Yeah, the drainage on the property, we have started relatively strong engineering drawings. We still have some work to work on those, but we have designed this so it would not flow into the neighbor's property. It would stay within our property and shooting to the back. All the water does flow to the back and
If I take
down
it-
that neighborhood.
If I look at your grading plan, it indicates that all the water is going down the driveway, and just before it gets to your garage, it takes a right and heads south to the neighbor's property.
Right.
So how do you manage that?
That actually is the way currently it's going also.
Okay, then,
So we would manage the flow of that so it'd be no more.
so how do you manage the roof runoff? Is that all splash at grade as well?
I'm sorry, what?
The roof runoff, the downspouts, do they splash at grade?
You know, I think we could tie those in and bring those into the grading. So it wouldn't be going off to the driveway element.
So you think you could look at tying those into the storm sewer, is that what you're saying?
Or looking into splashing it around, the tied in and
Well, I guess
going around.
the concern is on, you know, the last petition was a little bit different because it was such a small area of impervious surface, but I think in this one, you've got such a small lot and 50% of it is gonna be paved, and there's no real room for it to penetrate the soils before it gets to the neighbor. Did you look into, or would you consider running storm sewer to pick up the downspouts, the sump pump, and some of this runoff from the driveway?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Like I say, we're still not into full engineering yet on this. Obviously, at this point of the meeting, we wanted to hopefully get through architectural and everything else, but that would definitely be something we would look at. And again, there's no intention of us pouring any more water or anything to the neighbor to the south. Because we do know, I mean, the neighbor to the south actually has a pretty large, actually on the existing conditions sheet, there's kind of a large window well area that they have that is right off the driveway, you know, near their north property line. So that's definitely a concern we want to maintain.
Okay, well, I think that needs to be looked at pretty carefully. On the landscape plan, in the back, there's a couple of oak trees that you show on the landscape plan that are to remain. And it looks like that foundation is well within the root zone of those trees. Would you consider moving that garage a little bit to give those trees a little bit more room?
Yeah, we could definitely move that to the east, I'm sorry, to the west, to help accommodate some of that.
What kind of trees are those, Jeff, do you know?
You know, I don't
It indicates that they're oaks.
Just say oak by the garage.
Existing oak.
Yeah.
They're both oaks.
Is this home a spec home, or is this home for the homeowner to purchase?
It'd be a speculative
Is it a
home.
spec home?
Did you consider, you're increasing the impervious surface, you know, with probably the majority of it is in your driveway. Did you consider a pervious type of driveway, or, I mean, because you've got that and a turnaround apron and you're all the way back, so you got quite a bit of asphalt there.
Yeah.
And you've got, as Mike had said, you've got some serious drainage problems, probably.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you some numbers, the current home's driveway, I'm just rounding down here a little bit, is a little over 1,900. We're proposing about 3,000. So there's definitely 1,100 square feet in
Yeah,
just driveway
just-
element there.
Looking at your drawing, you're almost doubling it with that apron.
But also, the part of it is that whole backyard is all grass, where that water does go there and has an opportunity to infiltrate. With the development, it's not going to really have that opportunity.
So I think the neighbor, and I guess these letters that we got, he's the neighbor to the south, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think he's got some serious concerns, and I think he's entitled to them. And with that amount of asphalt, I have trouble with that.
I guess, though, to answer your question, to look into more of a pervious type element is something we haven't explored yet, but, you know, that's something we could definitely look at. I mean, there's different types of pervious paving that's out there now. Or there's different elements of just even using paver bricks themselves that will let some water
Yeah,
seep
right,
through.
yeah, all of that. That's a real sticking point in my mind,
Yeah, and
with a lot this size.
Steuart, to give kind of a graphic image of that, if we took this property and divided it in thirds along the long axis, I mean, you're looking at something along the first third of that property line to the neighbor that has a concern. I mean, it's almost 95% coverage across that property line.
Right.
Now, you know, on the flip side of that argument, I'm looking at the aerial photograph that's early on in your package. Both neighbors to the south of this property also have their driveways along that southern property line, completing all the way to the back where they have their garage as well. So I guess my concern is, where does this water start and stop? Does it start to the north? Does it start again to the north? Does it continue on? I think engineering is a critical factor in understanding what we're up against here. Because currently, I'm looking at the property, I'm seeing 107.5 near the street, you know, 107 as we get back toward the building, 106 and 5, all dropping down to 104, which is the neighbor's rear yard. So everything is funneling toward the neighbor to the south. So I also share that concern that Steuart has. Have you considered flipping the driveway to the other side of the property and allowing impervious surface, allowing grass to be along that southern property line? I mean, why pick
Yeah, I
that side?
think we were, at that point, picking on just the current entry into the site.
But you're tearing it down.
No, we're leaving the current.
No, you're tearing the house
curb
down.
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
And
But no, you asked the reasoning. I think that was the ultimate
So
reasoning. I
it's-
guess to consider flipping could definitely make some
Well, and
sense.
it's easy for a human to look at what they've got and understand what they're looking at and choose that as the knee-jerk reaction. But, you know, you start to do your studies, and it might be something where, you know, we might consider, you know, approval based on flipping the garage, which shouldn't do anything but,
I
Well,
think
and-
there's some
and the
tree,
only-
there's some tree issues too, John. that-
well, there's one tree there that's gone, that's the elm. Oh, that front one?
The front one and there's some along
You know what,
the side.
yeah, but that's, I mean, trees can be moved and
Well, and the only
driveways
other-
driveways can be meandered around trees as well, so, so one of those large trees are already been cut down. The other one's an ash, and it doesn't look like a healthy ash, so I don't have any problem with the trees. That's not the reason, but the impervious surface I'm concerned about.
John, can I just throw in one thing
Sure.
or two on some of the thought process there? The other thing is to the, you can see the properties to the north are somewhat unusual. There's two basic flags coming into that also.
I got
So
it.
that's why I was keeping, another thought was to keep the closest setback to the north versus the closest setback to the south. Again, to offer some privacy between the neighbor to the south and to our proposed.
But in that current condition, there's no opportunity whatsoever to have any landscaping screening the house to house. If you flip the drive on the other side and went drive to drive, there would be no, you know, reason to block anybody's view, because there isn't one.
And you
And then
know-
once you clear that house and you get near the neighbor to the north, you can swing your driveway a little bit further toward, away from him and keep those trees and have landscaping. Seems like the best of
Buffer.
all worlds right there.
And one thing too, I just wanted to point out, the neighbor to the south, like after the back of their property there, they do have some pretty substantial screening on their current property.
Yeah,
now,
I saw that.
And a fence.
I saw it, well, and but that stops right about where that driveway indicates, or right about where your building stops is where the
Exactly,
shrubs
like
and the
almost
trees.
at the edge of our new proposed building.
And they're not evergreens either, so there's certain times of the years where that's not gonna help.
Now, when I'm looking at your site plan, the footprint that you're indicating, does that match the other plans and elevations in the packet? On the site plan, it looks like you have some projecting bays on the first floor on the site plan drawing. AR1.
Yeah, no, you're correct. That is incorrect. We have a second story projection on AR9 that's projecting to the south.
And those are wider.
They're definitely wider. You know, I apologize, this was on an earlier version we did have.
And there are none
Because
on the
on the first
north.
floor, there was no projections. It's
Right.
just the second floor cantilever. Great catch.
Okay. On your statement intent, you're describing the new architectural style as colonial revival.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you believe that you've drawn?
Of our proposed, yeah, definitely. On a narrow lot, I mean, I
Craftsman to
can.
me.
Yeah, it's a
It-
mix.
Okay.
I agree.
I mean, I have a number of comments about the elevation and the style and the detail, but I think I'm gonna hold off on those because they're really numerous. I think there's a lot of issues on the elevations, so.
Michael?
A question on the landscape plan. On the landscape plan, it looks to me like you've indicated that there's one shade or ornamental tree proposed. Is that accurate with the replacement that's required?
Could you kind of give me that question again while I try to grab the landscape drawing?
It says in here on the landscape plan that there is one shade tree proposed, 3-inch diameter. I was just curious as to what the tree replacement is for the trees that need to come down.
Peter, do you have any other info on, because I know you had talked with the arborist? You know, I'm not sure if I have an answer for you. Megan, did the arborist review? I thought they had reviewed.
Based on the preliminary review by the city arborist, the plan that's in your packet would really need to be enhanced to meet the minimum requirements for the ordinance. And we would work with the petitioner to bring forward a landscape plan that meets the requirements.
Sorry about that.
I have a question for staff. On the lots to the north, it's kind of an unusual configuration. What is that lot directly north that's open?
You know, I'm not completely familiar with the way in which this area was subdivided, but there is a lot that's set back behind that front lot.
It shows up on that location map drawing, Mike?
So that
You can see it on the location map.
We can certainly
yeah.
investigate as to whether that's a legal zoning lot or what the history of that parcel is, and bring that information back to you.
okay, thank you.
It looks like from the front to the rear of the house is, from the covered porch in the front to the rear is 85 feet, is that correct?
From the complete front to back, yes. From front porch to the rear porch also.
That 29.5-foot dimension that you gave us then from the existing house to the new chimney, how does that work with that 85-foot overall?
If you go to, Charles, if you could please go to AR 14. This is a south overlay of existing home. The existing home is farther to the west. We are, again, setting it back farther to meet the setback requirements of 40, and again, like you had pointed out, we are at 43. So we do have some room possibly to move forward and still stay within zoning. You can see dashed in there, kind of in the middle of the house there, at the end of the current home. And then the main bulk of the house, the two-storied element, goes from that dashed line back to the line before the chimney.
So if I just roughly scale it, it looks to me like it's like twice as long as the current house. Is that a pretty fair assessment?
Yeah, not quite, because again, if you're looking at porches and things like that. And actually, too, if you go to, if you kind of flip between AR 16 and 17, if you kind of look at those two together, you can see the footprints of the home.
Any other questions? Thank you. At this time, open up to public testimony. If anyone would like to come up, please come to the microphone and state your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Mike Lincoln. I'm the homeowner at 1351 Edgewood Road, the property directly to the south of this project. My wife, 3 children, and I have lived at this home for the last 5 years, and like you, I care deeply about this community. I'm a third-generation resident of the city of Lake Forest. Without question, the existing structure at 1359 Edgewood, in my opinion, needs to be replaced or renovated. So somewhere in here, there is a very good project. Fortunately, there are precedents for the size, scope, and scale for similar projects, as you're aware, in this very unique and highly visible neighborhood that I call Lake Forest School, or High School Heights, that surrounds Lake Forest High School. It is the anchor of our community, and it gets a lot of traffic and a lot of visibility. Perfect example of previous projects, as you know now, and in some of your materials that I've provided, is the resident directly across the street at 1358 Edgewood. This home was replaced in 2007, and as you can see from the 4 pictures that I provided for you, 4 elevations, was done in a style consistent with the neighborhood and sufficient to create a 4-bedroom home for the family and their children. It also is the winner of the Historic Preservation Award. Mr. Child's project captures some of the elements shown in the various elevations, including the use of a front porch and relief and contrast and all the other architectural elements that have broken up some of the space in different planes. However, what is remarkably different is the rear elevation, the rear portion of 1358, as you will see, does not extend farther back into the adjacent lot. In fact, the end of the home is coterminous with the adjacent property. In part, I expect to help preserve privacy and provide consistency in the neighborhood. Which brings me to the first of my three concerns about this project, that being the preservation of our family's existing privacy. I've toured the site with Peter and have reviewed the packet submitted to the board. The massive size of the project will extend the residence, and the math needs to be clear, but by my calculations, well over 30 feet further into my backyard. And in effect, as the architect just acknowledged, more than doubling what's the existing structure that's in place there. To be sure, due to the long and narrow lot, of which I have one, the design does meet bulk requirements. However, the home, as drawn, will extend into the shaded areas of the photograph I've also provided you, a copy of which you have in your back pocket. This house will look directly into the second floor bedroom on the northeast corner of our home, as well as loom over our outdoor living space. The massive size will compromise our sense of privacy. The existing home, according to the tax assessor record, is 34 feet at its floor plate, and the proposed one is 77 feet, not inclusive of the porches. I can only imagine standing in my backyard that its presence, at least as currently drawn, will be not too dissimilar from having a large vessel, a virtual battleship parked next door. And certainly one that one lone tree of screening is not going to address. The second issue is that of, as has been touched on in earlier comments, is drainage and water runoff. I can tell you precisely where the water goes that falls in the backyard there, and ends up in my backyard and in my driveway due to the drainage. So in fact, when it used to rain here with some frequency, and I trust that it will do so again, I experienced standing water in my backyard. By my calculations, and the numbers differ, I was just calculating how much green grass and dirt is going to exist under what I could see. I saw about 73% of the lot's surface will be covered by impervious material. When combined with the proposed removal of two mature trees, an elm and an ash, one of which actually has been partially removed, the elm, this project will effectively deforest and subsequently pave a majority of the lot. The grade difference between our lots in the last picture you can see is significant. In the 5 years I've owned my home, we have never, ever had a single drop of water in our basement, not even seepage. We have a bedroom down there and a family room. While unencumbered with any details about water collection systems such as splash on grade, connecting downspouts, etc., I am deeply concerned that the grade, mass, removal of vegetation, and abundance of impervious material is going to have a detrimental impact on water retention at my property. My final issue is one of aesthetics and architecture. It is highly likely, in fact it is probable, that I will live the rest of my life in my home. Conversely, Peter may not spend a single night in his. Once again, and I don't begrudge developers, I work for them. Once again, the home does need to be replaced, and I applaud him for taking on this project. I also applaud his use of similar design elements, such as the ones across the street at 1358. However, the massive scale and length of this home is not consistent with what the rest of the neighborhood has. This design will leave me with potentially the only conforming home in the neighborhood to have another house looming over my backyard, a situation that will be only made worse by the removal of the garage, and therefore the sightline will include the other house to the north. As such, I respectfully request the Building Review Board to revisit this project plan with enhanced scrutiny on the mass and length of the home and its impact on my family's privacy, as well as pay special attention and require the use of all possible measures to address drainage, grading, and water runoff issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. Is there anyone else from the public? Okay. The petitioner does get a chance to respond to the public testimony, if you'd care to.
Thank you. A couple things again, I definitely wanted to point out, working all the numbers of the impervious areas
Again, our proposed construction is 48.26% of the lot. Nowhere near the 73%, 75% number he was putting out there. From an engineering side, we would do everything per engineering codes, reviews, all that. We would look at that so that water would not be going anymore to his site with our new construction.
Thank you. Yes?
Acting Chairman Kane, I just wanted to mention for the record that we did receive other phone calls from neighbors, in particular the neighbor to the north did call us. I wasn't sure if she would attend this evening with concerns for the siting of the house and views from her property to the subject project. So for the record, I wanted to state that.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions of the petitioner or the staff at this point?
I have a question for the petitioner. I notice as you leave your mudroom off the back, there's a small porch and 2 steps down to grade. Is there a patio planned for that area?
Off the steps? No.
So I'm looking at the landscape plan, so when you come out of the house, you walk down a couple stairs and then you're onto what? Grass, or is there, this printed very
Yes.
lightly.
Yeah, that's turf there.
It's on the grass.
Yes, you're going down from that rear door. There's a patio off the back of the house.
Oh, I see, on the
Yeah.
south side.
Exactly. That's like kind of off the family room element. There's a patio going on.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Time for the board discussion and comment, and I think I'd just like to lead off here and say a couple things. The massing of this house is, well, it's massive is part massing, and I will tell you that this is a very, very big house and on that lot, and frankly, I'm not comfortable with this design as situated right now, leaving the other design elements out, et cetera. Just the sheer size of this project, the length of it does not seem to conform to this neighborhood. Obviously very concerned about the drainage as well. Would love to hear the other members of the board comment.
I concur with you. I spoke earlier about the drainage, and I think there's some things that can be done there, but an 85-foot long, I just think that's way too much. I have serious trouble with that.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the style is attractive and fits the neighborhood. But it's too big, and I've lived with flooded basements in several houses in this town, and I really think that you need to tie in downspouts and look at some more impervious paving, pervious paving, and it needs a lot of work.
Well, I think this has the potential of being a very nice project. It needs some refinement, it needs some more answers to drainage, landscaping, and also the massing of the house. The house is really long, and is a little bit out of character for that neighborhood. So I think that, I like the way it's going. I like the project, but I think it needs some refinement.
Yeah, I agree with the other board members. I feel that the home is far too large for the lot. It's very long and deep. The drainage seems like it would be a big issue, and I think architecturally it's not colonial revival at all. It's more of a craftsman prairie. It's an eclectic mix of all sorts of kits and parts, and the proportions and the detailing of the elevation on the north side is all hodgepodge, and I feel it needs a lot of work.
I agree, and I'd like to just read a couple of things here that are on the staff report. It starts off, in the past, the board has paid careful attention to redevelopment in this area to ensure the character of the neighborhood is preserved and the lots are not overbuilt. It goes on to say, too, that the board's role is to balance the code allowances and standards with the neighborhood character and find appropriate solutions for new construction. I realize, Jeff, that this is under bulk, but I look at one of the criteria here, and it's criteria 5 that the city staff has pointed out is not met. And criteria 5, to me, is very important. It suggests the compatibility with the neighborhood and adversely impact the neighborhood character. And I think because this is an odd lot and because it does have that to the north, it has a wide open space there that really starts to show the length of this. I mean, you can show the front elevation, and yeah, it does look similar to the house that you're tearing down. That's because the lot's only so wide. The house is, what it needs to be, and the driveway is what it needs to be. But I think as I look at the side elevations, and maybe it's because there isn't any change in the plane that makes up the first floor. I realize what you're doing on the second with the gables, but they don't even really suit the windows where you placed them. Doesn't really even respect the windows all that much. To me, it looks like a breaking up of mass for mass sake. The grill pattern, I'm going to dovetail off of Monica a little bit. I agree that this is not, truly a colonial. It is more, there's a lot of arts and crafts detail with the shingles and the brackets. The window pattern is like one I've never seen before on the grills. And I just would like to see that mass broken up. Now, maybe it has to do with roof heights, but just this continuous, and the number I've heard was 85 feet, a continuous wall of 85 feet with repetitive windows, to me, doesn't suggest, the quaint neighborhood, or respect the quaint neighborhood that this is. It almost, to me, looks, from a side elevation as an apartment building, quite frankly. So I'd like to see that elevation, those side elevations, work to where the scale is dramatically broken up. And I don't mean to say reduced. There's things you can do in design to reduce some scale elements, but to break up this mass. And the north elevation that you're currently showing, it just appears to be a hodgepodge of windows and a couple of gables that, one I understand is centered on the window. The one to the right of that is got two windows, a double on one and a single on the other. It just doesn't read well to me. And then I question this element that pokes off the back that's just like a last-minute closet in the master bedroom that is not attractive to the rear elevation. I'm referring to this gable above the gable of the mudroom. That's just something that looks glommed on because you needed a little bit more closet. I'd like to see the details reworked. I'd like to see you consider flipping the driveway because, honestly, we've all shooting some numbers around from 75 feet to your suggestion that it was 36, now it's 48. The concern I have is the entire third of that south elevation. I'm going to suggest the number's closer to 90 and then some. And you're giving us 1 foot 3 inches of space between the edge of the driveway and the edge of the property. And in that 1 foot 3 inches, you're picking up anywhere from 1 foot to 1 foot 4 inches of fall against the property line. And you're not going to get that angle of repose with dirt. So is there going to be a retaining wall poured there? Because if there isn't, that driveway is going to fail and pour even quicker into the neighbor's area well. So I can't support this, and I don't know how you're coming to us with a garage off the back that's literally 3 feet from a 36-inch oak and maybe 6 or 8 feet from another 36-inch oak. I mean, that shows somewhat of a disrespect toward our forestry policies in town, but I can't support this.
All right, anyone else have any comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we continue to the petition. Give the petitioner an opportunity to address some of the concerns raised.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
No, that's true.
The next item on the agenda is a request for approval for a new single-family dwelling on a vacant lot located at 561 Circle Lane. The owners are Jim and Janet Wedgman. Contract purchaser and developer is Stephen Azen from MLCB, and the representative is Sergio Estensoro, architect. And I apologize for the pronunciations.
That's pretty good.
Conflicts?
Yes, and before you begin, do we have anyone with any conflicts on this project?
I don't have a conflict. I do know the architect, and I can be objective in my opinions on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Get out of my driveway.
Hi, good evening. My name is Steve Eisen. I'm with MLCB Inc. We are the contracted purchaser and the developer of this hopefully new single-family residence at 561 Circle Lane. With me tonight is Sergio Estensoro of SGE Associates. Sergio's done, I think, 9 projects roughly in Lake Forest over the years. So, as you said, you're familiar with him, and he's familiar with the village, with the city. My wife Victoria is also part of our company. She's helping us tonight. And I also, joining us tonight is Jim Wayman. Jim is the current owner and seller to us of our property. He and his wife Janet have gone through part of the process with this on a different home, but have decided to sell this. We are purchasing this property and proposing to build a new single-family residence, the details of which you should have in your packets. My company, MLCB, has been a developer and a custom luxury home builder on the North Shore for 20-plus years. Our footprint has been mostly in Winnetka and Glencoe and Highland Park and some in Kenilworth. This would be our first foray into Lake Forest. We've always been interested in developing homes here in this village, in the city, and look forward to this being our first successful project here. The home that we're proposing is it's about a 7,400 square foot. That counts the first, second, and attic levels. 7,400 square foot English Tudor brick home, 7 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, and 3 half baths. We brought a lot of proposed finishing materials with us here today, and I can share those with you as we continue with the discussion. It's like I said, a brick home with Indiana limestone detail on the sills. Vermont slate roof, aluminum clad windows in a rustic brown color, simple entryway, the limestone entryway. Can somebody help me with this machine? I can put some stuff on the projector then.
Could I ask you to speak up a little bit also, please?
Sure.
I'm having a hard time.
Sure.
Thank you.
I was commenting about the English Tudor style that we plan to develop. in this house. Mostly a brick exterior with some limestone detail, slate roof, copper half-round gutters, and a very simple traditional English Studer style home. We have a lot of the proposed finishes with us here today that we'd like to share with you. I think as Megan's report points out, I think the overall scale and mass fits into all the parameters required by the village. It's not significantly larger nor smaller than many other homes on this block or down the street. It's not set further nor closer than some of the other homes. We don't believe it impedes any views or any lookouts of any other neighboring homes or other homes along this street. A lot of these details we think we explained well in the letter of intent that you should have in front of you. I would turn this over to a discussion more of the materials that we propose to use. I can share with you, like I said, the brick color, for example. We presented a massing model that we can talk about with respect to some of the roof lines and scale that Megan's report requested of, or suggested of.
That'd be great. While we're getting the material set up, does staff want to present, please?
Thank you, Acting Chairman King. This petition is a little bit different than the ones that the board has most recently reviewed with respect to new construction. It is a new home on a vacant lot, and the size and scale of the home, I think, is generally compatible with other structures in this neighborhood. There are some other unique challenges that go along with developing on a vacant lot. Not only is the board looking at siting a home in a manner that is compatible with other structures, given the wooded character of this lot, the petitioner is working with restraints of impact to mature trees as well. So there are quite a few trees that are being removed with this request. The intent is to keep a wooded character at the street, or I'm sorry, a treed character from the street, and clean up the understory of the lots to allow views into the home, which is not uncommon with other structures in this area. It's one aspect from staff's perspective that board input and discussion is suggested. Staff did suggest that a model be presented for this project, given the complexity of some of the roof forms and the elevations, to really help the board see how some of those roof lines come together and play out in 3D. The materials that the petitioner is proposing are a natural slate brick. They are of a high quality and consistent with this area of town. There are some aspects in the staff report called out, and I welcome your comments. In particular, there is an attic space build-out that's proposed with this new house. And I think careful attention really needs to be paid to those higher spaces so that light shed onto neighboring properties is not a nuisance to neighbors in the surrounding neighborhood. There were several letters of correspondence presented to the board this evening from neighbors, mainly relating to construction, parking, and traffic through the streets in this neighborhood. As with all large construction projects, staff is recommending that a staging and parking plan be presented at the time of permit. I would also add to that, in the future, when it is before you for final action, that condition also relate to how trucks enter this neighborhood and where the traffic patterns are. At this time, we are recommending the board provide input and direction and continue the item for a future date.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board to the petitioner and staff? John, you want to lead off? Since, you're always
I'll
the
lead
anchor
off.
man?
I usually wait a bit. The flat roof, I'm gonna question, I'll start with the questions on that. Out west in Oak Brook, they have their height limit, and it's not unusual for designers there to design a facade of a house and then hit that 30-foot height limit and chop it off. Here in Lake Forest, we've got our bulk ordinance, and in essence, it starts to limit by almost a penalty in square footage of what you're doing with that roof. We don't have a height limitation, however. In this case, the flat roof, it's clearly being used to limit the bulk and provide more square footage in the house. Having said that, understanding it's on a very forested lot, and probably has no impact on anybody seeing that it's a flat roof, I'll entertain it. I don't think it's as done as elegantly as I'd like to see it. If you can explain the reason for the flat roof, I guess I'm going to put it in the line of a question. I probably answered it for you, but is that, why so much flat roof in this house, I guess is my question.
I'll let Sergio add some detail to this.
The answer basically to limit.
Excuse me, Sergio, could you step the microphone, please? Thank you.
It's to limit the square footage of the house, like being especially in the lower flat roof area. The area is calculated in the attic.
And is that space in the attic being used for living space? I thought I saw a plan in
Yes.
there. It is.
The
it's-
higher end of the flat roof, the steps up, that whole area is used.
Is this a speculative house, or is this for a homeowner?
It's a spec house.
It's a spec house.
In fact, this is one of the reasons, I think, to your question, is we think the views of the lake and the proximity to the lake, and to take advantage of a potential third floor, I think is a enormous positive to the development of this house. And therefore, the flat roof and the livable space in the attic and the walkout balcony from the third floor is what attracted us to the opportunity.
Could you bring your volume up?
Sure, sorry. Sorry, I'll
drifting,
repeat myself.
get
I
lost
said,
in your thoughts.
I apologize. I said that the proximity to the lake and the potential views of the lake is a big bonus to the development of this house, and creating the livable attic space and the balcony off the third floor and the seasonal views of the lake, so to speak, is a big bonus to the opportunity that we see here.
I do like the third floor view. I'm not sure with the amount of trees that you're actually going to achieve that desire, but
I think they're seasonal views.
yeah. I guess that's my only question.
I got a few questions. Well, firstly, I appreciate the model because I do think it helps us all, when we review the elevations. I think the model, gives me I'm a little bit more comfortable with the home after seeing the model, but I do still feel that the rear elevation especially is overly complicated in its roof forms. So I do wonder if you had had some other variations or design thoughts on that. And I also, I kind of question the brackets that you have all around the home. The model doesn't really show that. The proportion of them are something that I've never really seen before.
Sure, I mean, the model was more of a massing model, per se, without the
Yeah.
detail for the brackets.
Are they at timber?
They would be timber, and they would be painted, and they would be painted the same color as the windows, which I have a heavy sample. This is not the window design. That's not the light pattern that we proposed. The light pattern is shown in the drawings, but that is the color we proposed. It's a colby rustic colored window, and the trim would be painted to match.
Okay. And the model also brings forth a comment that staff had about the front dormers and the face of those dormers being clad in brick, and that's something that, you know, traditionally one wouldn't have. So I think a question would be is if you'd be willing to change that to stucco or to slate or some other material that is not masonry.
I think we would. Let me add one more detail.
Look at your.
Are they in the same plane as the?
No, they're up in.
Are you sure? Because this porch comes down quite a ways.
The model has it out further.
Perhaps this would work better if I passed around the photograph, but this is a detail from a similar home, from another home with a similar detail like this, where dormers are actually stepped back into the sweeping roof line. It's a little bit unclear with the model. We finished this afternoon, didn't quite get that eave right on the massing model, but we would be open to maybe cladding them either in timbers or a different material on those dormers. That would not be a problem.
And,
Are they in the same plane as the wall, Sergio?
Yes, yeah.
They are, okay.
Just as a comment that I have, you know, as an architect, when I've done homes that had a third floor bedroom, we normally had to have two means of egress out of it, two stairs. So I don't know if that's something you've
I don't know
ever
about two stairs.
encountered.
There's the stairs and there are two windows, and those
The two-
dormer windows that I think were referred to in Megan's report serve as the egress windows for the bedroom sleeping space up
But
on the attic
I've
floor.
come across where I've had 3 floors, that the third floor, if it's a bedroom, well, it's something to consider. Okay.
Are you counting any of the screened porch into your square footage for bulk?
I believe we are, Sergio. Screen.
Are you counting the screened porch and towards square footage against your bulk?
Well, as far as the bonus is given.
So, no, you're not?
Right.
Okay.
There's a comment from staff that the third floor dormers were a little larger maybe than perhaps were necessary. Would you be open to perhaps downsizing those a bit to match more in lines with the second floor windows?
I think we could go back and reconsider that. I know the width is required for egress, but the height issue, Sergio, can you comment on the height of those dormers?
Shortened down, the 2 dormers that we talked about. They were mostly for egress and light and vent issues. There's still a bit of room, so we can accommodate that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
A question on the back elevation, the dormer to the right of the balcony, it's right in front of the chimney. Does that, how far is it from the chimney?
About 4 to 5 feet.
4 or 5 feet.
It appears you've got a fireplace in the screen-in porch and then one in the family room. Is that one continuous chimney that goes up with two, or how does that whole chimney work with that?
Yeah, it works into one inside.
It takes advantage of one stack.
It does, okay, thank you.
I think it's a very efficient design.
This is a 4-car garage, 2 double doors, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, looking at the right elevation, that shows that. Then looking at the cross-section view, you're calling it a 3-car garage. Are this just changes in design as you go along? Or?
That's correct. I think it's
Okay.
mislabeled as a 3. It is in actuality a 4.
It is 4, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the rake eave that I'm looking at here, is that wood or is that stone? It's hard to tell on your elevation.
Show me which page you're looking at.
Oh, I see, it's a 3.5-inch crown molding. Okay. Another question on the detail that you have above your window heads. On the first floor are heavy timber. On the second floor, you're doing brick soldier. I wonder if you can, and then actually then on the dormers on the side by the garage, it appears you have another material for those dormers, maybe stucco, and it appears that the head design on those is stucco as well. So I'm questioning why the inconsistency on the window headers.
The wood in the front elevation was just introduced for bring a little elegance to the front elevation. They could go obviously back to brick. To do all of the headers in wood would probably be a little much.
Costly.
So we can definitely eliminate the wood in the first floor. But at that level, it's a little more friendly.
So you like the wood?
Mm-hmm. And it would be painted the same as all the other.
And is that a solid timber, or is that just a
It's not a
one by?
It would be a solid timber piece flashed from behind and set into the brick. And the brick
So it's a
around it.
load-bearing heavy timber lintel?
Correct.
And it would be the same wood as the
As the
door, or?
brackets, yeah.
Okay.
No, it's the
Well,
bracket.
no, the door sample here is.
Timber.
It's a sample of potential front door,
Okay.
but the color of the trim really matches more to the brown rust of the window.
Oh, all right, okay.
I don't know if you've seen some of the correspondence, but basically the neighbors are very concerned with traffic and construction traffic. Would there be enough clearance with tree removal that the construction traffic could park on the property? I mean, before the landscaping is done?
This is a very large lot. We're a very experienced builder. We would have constant site supervision between myself and obviously supervisors that work for us.
But you've got subs that park all over the place, and I think this is what the neighbors are concerned.
Correct, and that would be all monitored. And there is plenty of parking on the lot itself.
On the site, on the lot,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So, I mean, I walked the lot, it's brush now, but a lot of that would be removed.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the landscape plan here. I don't know if best to pass that around, but most
I can
of
see.
the brown and orange trees that are marked are trees that will remain.
Mhm.
There's plenty of trees that are marked as replacement inches for the trees that we would be removing, but there's plenty of parking on site.
Where would you park them?
Well, in the temporary driveway initially, and certainly at the right side of the house. The driveway...
Right side is on the east side?
On the east side, correct. The driveway would be cut. The driveway was designed to minimize the impact on the trees. That's why it's a little bit winding, to protect a few of the trees that were between here and where the house would be situated. Obviously, we need a turnaround and an exit space from the garages, but that would be used as parking.
But all those trees to the west of the driveway, that's sort of a protected area?
The trees to the west of the driveway are protected trees, and I think they'd be protected with silt fencing and construction fencing.
Could you go to the front elevation, please, and help this non-architect with some questions? Okay, on the far right-hand side, looks to be a dormer, and the vertical of it says slate. So that surface is slate. And then if you go all the way to the other end of the drawing, between the first chimney and the angled line of the roof peak, way up at the top, there looks like a bunch of little dotted lines in there. Is that another material, or is that a computer error, or?
It would be slate returns, so it would be consistent. It just probably didn't come across on the drawing, but we can mark that for sure.
Okay, because on the far right-hand side again, the vertical to the right of where it says the slate, the vertical is slate, looks like brick. So your verticals are not all the same material.
Well, that's a dormer that you see on the right side. So it's coming off the roof, so you pick up the slate coming back into the dormer. The brick beyond is a wall of the house, or the back.
Okay.
But to her point, if you've got slate on the side of that dormer, and you go to your right elevation where the garage is, and you see those dormers faced at you now, it does look like it's pochade as a different material. Is
Right,
that to
the
be
front would be not slate.
So it's
the
just slate on
returns.
the side, and then the front gable end is a different material?
Yes.
Stucco?
It could
What
be
is it
stucco,
shown as?
It could be a batten board.
We're open to your input. It's drawn as stucco, but I think we'd be open to either a wood
I think
material.
it should be consistent on the dormer rather than end at the outside corner. So, would be your call, but I wouldn't want to change materials on the outside corner.
All right.
We can note that.
Are they four different materials? I'm just, I don't understand not being an architect. It just looks like there's four different materials from this elevation, but I'll trust you, architects.
I think you're right. It looks like you're implying, brick on the face of one dormer, stucco on the face of a different dormer.
Slate,
on the side,
another,
dormer.
yeah.
So I think it happened.
There's a little bit of inconsistency in the nomenclature, but Ms. Dugan, you were referring to the side of this dormer. So the view from this side on that front elevation is shown as stucco, and then the extension of
Shown as
this
slate.
wall. So looking at this wall right here, that is the brick.
Okay.
But we can modify that to make sure it's one consistent material.
Yeah. Thank you.
The railings, are they wrought iron railings throughout the house, or what material would those be?
Typically, we would do a powder-coated wrought iron railing. Probably the color to match either the windows or something consistent with the house with a brick, so it would blend in.
And then your gable ends are the crown molding, but if I'm looking at just an eave, if you could describe what's happening there, because it does look like there is somewhat of a soffit projection. I'm assuming there's also a gutter. So if you can just elaborate a little bit on what your typical eave overhang might be.
The eave is a crown molding,
Okay?
goes to the flat wall,
So-
and there's a gutter, half round, just hanging from that, from the edge.
So the eave overhang is just whatever the crown molding gives you. So if it's is it like it is in the rake, a 3.5-inch crown?
No, it's a bigger crown.
A 6-inch crown?
6 1/4, yeah.
So it might have a 4-inch projection on the angle?
Right.
And is there a freeze board that, where the wall plane meets the brick?
Yes.
So then there's, so it starts off with a freeze board, it completes to the roof line with a crown mold, and then you're supporting a half-round gutter with some
With
anchors?
brackets.
Brackets?
Right.
Is that copper?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then where the slate meets the flat section of roof, that's going to be flashed with copper up there as well?
That's correct. And all the pans, for example, the dormers as they sit back to the roof line, all the copper pans, copper flashing.
And then another question on, there's some elements on the rear elevation. It's almost a standalone, probably a sunroom or a breakfast room or so that has, it looks like it has a sweeping or swooping roof form to it. And then that occurs again, if we look at the rear elevation, on the left side, again, that roof is swooping, but that's not a consistent detail, that just only occurs there. There's no other swoops where the,
Actually, the front of the house has a big swoop. The model doesn't capture it, it's broken. But that is why I was carrying that element throughout.
so that front porch is also a swooping
Yeah.
element?
Mhm.
I see. And then along the garage side, it looks like there's a swoop that then captures that porch or that door's roof with the brackets. And then lastly, that standalone room also swoops. Okay.
Any questions? Okay. Now is the opportunity for the public for any testimony.
Hi, my name is John Santel. I live at 545 Circle Lane. I am the home next door to this lot, and I'm to the, I guess it'd be the northwest. I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts tonight on the consideration of the Building Review Board on this. The home is certainly big, and it's a lovely home, and I welcome them building their home on the lot, but I do have think that a portion of the lot, it's essential that a portion of the lot be kept in a very natural state, and that with limited alteration to the topography and the grade of this lot. My concerns really are twofold. First of all is flooding and hydrology in this area, and secondly, the remarkable signature trees and the natural character of this lot and its relationship to the natural feel of the neighborhood, the ravine behind it, and the shared easement we have to Lake Michigan. In terms of hydrology, this is a very, very wet lot, and it holds and manages a lot of stormwater year-round. The reason that my lot and Lot 155, as you'll even note on their drawings, have boardwalks on them is because the previous owner recognized it was naturally wet, and it stays wet almost year-round. My concern with this design right now is that the amount of roof, driveway, pool deck surface area, and potentially lawn, where is all this water going to go? I'd like to share a little history on why this lot is so wet. Many years ago, this water used to naturally be managed by the natural grade heading towards Lake Michigan via the ravine that is behind of it. But not anymore. This is in part because when the McCormick estate was built, they built a road back there, and this road has basically created sort of a pool for several of the homes in that area. So the water stays on site. For my yard, this is compounded because my yard is the low spot. And if you look at their topographical maps, all the water off of their lot will run into my yard. I've taken great pains and expense to manage the hydrology in my backyard to save some of the substantial trees and understory in my backyard, and I've been successful at it. But this is going to change a lot of things, and I'm very concerned about the water. In fact, a good portion of this water is maintained and managed in the northwest corner of this lot. And so I just really think that I would ask you to really be careful and to really look very closely at the hydrologic plan in this lot and to not let the hydrology change. It's all coming to my yard and my neighbors' yards who take a lot of water as well. Circle Lane in general is a low spot in the neighborhood, and when the big rains hit, and like we heard earlier tonight, they will hit again, Circle Lane takes a lot of water, and it just is all running that way. So I'm very concerned about that, and I hope that you will carefully consider the grade and ways to manage the stormwater in this area. My second concern relates to this, and it's really the trees and the natural character of this lot. This is a ravine setting and habitat, especially in the backyard, and we all enjoy the feeling of the large trees, and we all share an easement down to through the ravine, down to the back of this property to the lake. Moreover, there are a number of very large specimen oaks that border our property, some of which are well over 100 years old. There's another whole next generation of young oaks that are probably 40 years old coming up in this lot. One tree in the lot is probably the finest swamp oak I've seen in Lake Forest. So at any rate, aside from the aesthetic value and the property value and the natural value of these trees, they also help to manage all the floodwaters on our land. These trees take up a lot of water. It's part of the beauty of that whole area. So they're old trees. Their root systems extend well beyond their drip lines. 100-year-old trees, root systems extend very large. A lot of these trees now have grafted to one another, so they are sort of a living, combined ecosystem. If you kill one of those trees, you'll likely kill them all. And right now, these trees are, with the drought situation, if they go in with heavy equipment, they start putting lawn in, grading, fences, sprinkler systems, all these things, we will lose those very large trees, and it'll be a tragedy not only for property values but for the area as well. So I would ask you, in terms of building this lot, to really take care and have some very large protected areas as they do some building, some very large buffer areas. He talked about there's plenty of room for parking on this lot. Well, if you look at the way the trees are in the natural areas, there's not a lot of room for parking if they have a lot of equipment on this site at the same time. So I would encourage you to have some very aggressive protected areas in there, and so we can hopefully keep as much of this property in a natural state as possible. In closing, I just want to mention a couple other items. I do have a portion of my boardwalk which extends onto the east. It encroaches onto their lot by about 2 feet. This encroachment was allowed and as part of my purchase agreement from the previous owner, Mr. Rick Hall, so I want to make sure that this was recognized, that this is an allowable encroachment. If they want to talk with me about moving that, I'm happy to talk with them. And also, I would concur with the letters that have been sent regarding construction traffic in our area. This is the 4th substantial home we've had built in Little Circle Lane in 4 years, 2 of which were tear downs. We're well aware of sort of the complexity of the construction traffic. Please take it down Wesley. And also, there's a curve in the road. The contractors tend to park on the curve of the road, and it's a really dangerous situation for kids and a lot of young people driving down the street and that sort of thing. So we'd ask for your assistance with that as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Acting Chairman King, could I ask for a recess?
We will have a 5-minute recess.
Is this the ravine? Is this the ravine? It's right here. Oh, that's not Lake Shore. Okay, I'm all turned around. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
Here's the lake. So it just comes down this line like this.
Okay. What do you think about his drainage concerns? And the hydrology and all that? I know.
This is going this way, and then it's gonna go this way. This is his house.
Mm.
This area is all flat.
Mhm.
Get back here and switch to this one. But I don't think this is construction back at this. They're not gonna do it face to face. And this is all gonna be construction, and this is gonna be
Well, and then this is also going to become impervious, so it won't absorb anymore, right? Mhm. No. Well, so it needs to go back to the city solid.
Good evening, we're re-adjourning. We just completed the questions and clarifications and public testimony. The next on the agenda is the ability for the petitioner to counter the public testimony, to respond to it if they so desire.
Excuse me, Acting Chairman King, I need to recuse myself. I'm finding I have a conflict of interest in voting on this petition.
Okay, Mr. Clair has recused himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Centel. I'm conscious and appreciate your concerns about the grading. The boardwalk issue, I think you and I talked briefly one time about it, and I'm happy to discuss it. And I understand if your deed or whatever covers it, we'll certainly honor that, but we'll want to review that with you together. I do think there was one obvious error in your commentary with respect to pushing the water onto your lot. The engineering clearly shows that the water is not being pushed onto Mr. Centel's property. It's being instead directed to the back of this property and also to the front around the new footprint of the house. I think it's clear to show that, in fact, even within the 15-foot building line away from his property, the silt fencing, the construction fencing that will be erected is not even within 15 feet of his property. And so there's very much limitation as to what we can do close to his property line. But like I said, we've had many projects up and down the North Shore. We're very sensitive to the neighbors' issues, the neighbors' concerns with respect to grading, and have always followed the plans and are sure to follow the plans. And understand his concerns and address them accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions from the board to the petitioner or staff? Okay, it is now time for board discussion and comment. Would anyone like to kick it off?
Well, I guess I'll start. I do think that there's less room for parking, construction parking, than I think I'm led to believe. I think it's really limited to the driveway area. You're not going to be able to park in the wooded area to the west of the driveway. So I think that's going to have to be something that they're going to be very sensitive about. They do have some storm sewer run throughout on the grading plan, but it doesn't show them connecting the downspouts. So I think that it would be a good idea to consider connecting the roof leaders to the storm sewer system. Based on the grading plan that I see, it does show like the northwest corner of the house does drain north towards Mr. Santel's property. So, I mean, I think that's something that they might want to consider or take a closer look at. So, those are the only comments that I have right now.
Okay.
I think aesthetically, from the ground eye level, it's an attractive plan. I'm a little concerned about the flat roof, but I suppose only the birds will be seeing that. But I echo the concerns about the drainage and the construction siting.
Steuart, any thoughts?
I think it's an interesting house. I don't think we have anything that shows how far back it is in relation to other homes. I don't think we have any kind of site plans that show that. Maybe I can get it
The
on.
site does show it on the site grading plan.
It does where?
This drawing.
Oh.
Here you go.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, so, yeah, it's typical, yeah, so, yeah. The complications of are what are you gonna do with all the contractors? And I'm sure it's workable. The flat roof, I don't concern myself. The snow will probably take care of that. And it would be interesting to see in the winter if you could see the lake from there. It looks like a beautiful home. That's kind of where I am.
Well, architecturally, I believe the front elevation in the Tudor style of it is well proportioned, with the exception of the front dormers, where I think that there could be a change in the material of that. I do think the remaining three elevations, they've begun to lose some of the Tudor look of those elevations. I feel that the elevations are busy, kind of complicated, and they just really sort of lose that simplicity of a Tudor. So I'm wondering if there could be some additional review of those elevations, maybe some enhancement, some simplification of it. Even like the rear elevation to me almost looks like there's three separate, parts to it. It looks like three different buildings kind of squished together. But I believe the materials are all of a very good quality. I think the colors are all excellent. I'm just concerned that the architectural style has lost its true calling, and there could be some further refinement on it.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments. I think it's an attractive home, especially the front facade really looks sharp, I think. And again, the materials, the slate roof, the brick, windows. This is going to be a very high-quality house in fitting to this neighborhood, which is good. I have the same concerns with construction traffic and drainage, and would hope that, you know, we would be able to take care of that. And I know the city's staff is very aware of these issues as well, so I think we can get by that. As far as action tonight, what we'd like to coalesce around, I think staff had recommended maybe continue this based upon some of the refinements that came up in the discussion, maybe with some of the dormers, materials, et cetera. I don't know what the board thinks of that. I don't know if it's subcommittee worthy or what action we'd like to take tonight.
How do you feel about it, Monica? Do you think that you want to see it come back, or you go to subcommittee, or both?
I think both. I think a subcommittee and then come back to the full board, because, I mean, I think the other three elevations had, there's significant amount of work that could be altered on it. I mean, I think it's very close. I mean, I do think it's a nice structure, but I just think that
Yep.
there could be some improvement.
I'd also like to see a more detailed landscape plan for protection of the oak trees that Mr. Santel referred to.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
So I'd like to make a motion to that effect?
I guess I could. Make a motion that we continue the petition, that the petition goes to a subcommittee, and that it come back to this board for further consideration.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the opportunity for the public to address the board on any non-agenda items. Going once, going twice. And then finally, any additional information from the staff at this time?
Just to note that the regularly scheduled August date has been canceled. We are looking for an alternative August date, and we will contact you and petitioners that have filed with us for an August meeting as to that date once it's finalized.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we